Oh, we've moved a little bit. Hey everybody, welcome to Satsang. Let me make sure that the sound is working and that I can be heard. Channel, and we're live. Let's see. Yes, we can hear. Very good. Great. I'm checking over here. Yes. Turn off the sound. This is also where I will. Got it. See all of the chats going on, but I will need my glasses for that. Good thing I brought them. So, thank you all for being here. If you're just joining me, I'm just getting started. Just making sure that the sound is still working okay, and that you're all able to see me all right. There we go. I guess it looks good. So as people are beginning to join, this is great. Hello. Let's see. Hi, G. Hi from Lithuania. Wonderful. Hi from Sweden. Wonderful. As people are beginning to join, we're just going to join. I'm just going to sit here and play this, my little spaceship that everybody has been enjoying me playing. So as you're all coming in now, welcome to Satsang. Really good to be here today on this beautiful June afternoon. At least it's a June afternoon where I am. Some of you might be in the evening. Trusting the sound is okay for everyone. Thank you all for being here as always. Thank you for taking time out of your day to have what I believe to be the most important conversation that somebody in the human kingdom can have. When we recognize that the lens through which we see absolutely everything, the lens that literally creates the world in which we live, is the view you have of yourself. It's a pretty stunning realization. Have you noticed how many times during the day you use the word I? It's a constant referring back. I mean, it makes sense. You are the center of your life. And so everything is going to be in reference to the I. That's why they call it first person. Right? The you is only in relative to the I. So is the he, she, it, them, us, we, all relative to the sense of I. it's really funny because it is so important, it is so constant, it is the central reference point for absolutely everything in our lives. We rarely stop and ask ourselves, what is that referring to? When I use that word I, exactly what am I talking about? Well, for most people, it's the body, the history, memories, all the events that happened. But you know, those are all events that happened. Who are you? Who are you? That's the question we're here in Satsang to discuss, to consider, to be thoroughly engaged in. I trust you can all hear me okay. I'll move the microphone a little bit so it's a little bit less. Actually, let me see if I can move it up and get a little bit more out of the picture. What do you think? So it's not quite so intrusive. There we go. Oops. So it's not quite so intrusive. How's that? Oh, that's good. I like that. Very good. Very good. So it's here, but I'm gonna barely notice it. Good. So welcome everybody. Welcome everyone to Satsang. It is so very good to be here. As I said, this conversation about the nature of the self, I don't know, for some reason it's been relegated to like something you do later, after everything is done, the kids are raised and the dog dies, right? And you're free to do, it becomes luxurious. When in fact, every single event of our life, whether we experience suffering or bliss, depends completely upon our sense of I am, the sense of self. Completely. I mean, no exceptions to that. It is completely and totally a product of how we view ourselves. That self-image is the lens through which everything is experienced. And it will produce either suffering or happiness, depending on the nature of that lens. So for those of you who are joining me here, the group of you, which is like 34 of you now, congratulations. You've decided to actually take a nice long look at that which is creating pretty much everything in your life. Not pretty much, everything in your life. The entire interpretation and quality of experience is a result of who you believe yourself to be. There's no such thing as meaning or purpose or truth in any event or thing. All the meaning is what we give it. If meaning and truth and all that was inherent in an experience, then everyone would have exactly the same reaction to having the same experience. But they don't. Go to any sports game, and there's, people are rooting for both sides, and one side, the one event takes place, but depending on which team you're rooting for, it has a completely different meaning, doesn't it? It's just story upon story upon story upon story. There's nothing inherent. There is no meaning inherent in anything. Now, that does not mean life is meaningless. What it means is that meaning does not belong to the object you've attached meaning to. Meaning belongs to you. And the meaning that you attach to something is completely a result of the lens through which we perceive it, and that lens is the sense of identity. So this question of who am I? Take away all the memories, all the associations. Take away all of the experiences. Take away everything that's actually happened and what's left. But when you do that, and it's not hard to do, you're left very simply with just this sense of being, a sense of your own existence, prior to anything else arising. And in fact, anything else arising is only going to draw its meaning, even its existence, from you perceiving it. Does a thought exist independently from you? Are there thoughts like, hanging around in the room here, waiting for me to drop by and it can drop into my head? You cannot separate thoughts from the consciousness that is perceiving them. So thoughts don't have any independent existence whatsoever. So we have an enormous amount of authority for saying thoughts are consciousness. They are consciousness made manifest. The same is true for emotions, everything you feel. Now, they have a different flavor, but do emotions exist independently of you? Is there an emotion farm somewhere where they're growing them, right? Or manufacturing them somewhere in the Midwest or China? No, they have no existence separate from you. They have no existence outside of you cognizing them. So emotions as well are simply you. They are consciousness made manifest. And exactly the same is true for sensation. If we look deeply and closely at our actual sensations, what we find is just a different vibratory frequency. We attribute those sensations to the independent existence of a body and material structures and the like. But if you really want to examine it closely, well, I can find all of the experiences which I've called sensation. I can't find a body. This is a powerful insight. The body is just an idea. The experience of sensation is, and again, can it exist independently of you perceiving it? Are there sensations out there that you're not perceiving, that are existing somewhere and that are going to come in at some point? Are they like actors waiting off stage or in the green room waiting for their cue to come on stage? You can't separate the experience from the experiencer. It's a unity. It's a singularity. You cannot separate consciousness from the content of consciousness, what consciousness is experiencing. The only point I make, the only reason I bring this up, is to show that consciousness is primary. It's regarded as a result of extremely complex set of functions in the nervous system that give rise to it, right? Which is amazing when you think about it. Because what is the body? All of the structures of the body. I mean, if you look at it from the point of view of the evolutionary over billions of years, 4 billion years, I guess the Earth's been around, and like that much of life, right? And life in its very primitive form ended up, carbon molecules which combined in such a way as to make a cell that interacted with its environment. Now, I have no idea how that happened, but there it is, this cell interacting in the environment. Now, no consciousness as far as we know, right? And then all of these other cells, and the cells gathered together and need slightly larger groups, right? Still no consciousness. No consciousness anywhere in the picture. And it just continued over time to become more complex and more complex, more specialization and the like. So there became an interdependency, so that this guy did this job and this guy did this job, and if they both did their job well, the entire thing lived, and if they didn't, the entire thing died. And on it went until it made organs and processes and systems, and then whales and monkeys and us. sitting here, this body sitting here. Now, I can, looking at the entire thing from beginning to end, I can find no consciousness. Somehow, magically, consciousness, self-awareness, emerges. And that's really the theory, that it's just an emergent property. A theory based on the assumption that matter is primary. Right? But what if it isn't? What if consciousness is primary? What if the fundamental, the God particle, the essential, the field that everything appears in is in fact consciousness, self-aware consciousness? It would mean there is no matter per se. Matter is just a concept laid on top of the experience of there being something, me, and something else. But it's totally just an experience. It's an illusion. I never actually experience anything or anyone else. I only experience here, now. The self, me, the I. That's all I ever experience. Well, I'm seeing that the questions are beginning to compound, so I had better get back here and take a look at them. Let's see. Hi, G. Happy Sunday from Inner Aesthetics. Hello. Emiliano from Sweden. Enrique Benito Oliver from Spain. Hello. Sanjeev. Hello. Eva from Poland. How do I pronounce that? Iftikhar? Nice to be here. Iftikhar Ahmed. Very good. David and Elaine, hi GP, greetings from Southeast England. Good to see you. More importantly, hear you, which I guess I'm being heard. Good. Marlene, hi GP, hi Marlene, so good to have you. Pink Energy with Eli. Hi Eli. Marlene says, thank you for sharing your time and creating the space for these conversations. You're very welcome. I love doing it. James Breeden, hello to all. I hope everyone is doing well. Ursula, hello. Ursula here from Madeira Island, which is in Portugal. Duck says, hey GP. When I observe trying to locate the source of observing, I tend to feel the observer localized somewhere. Is that an illusion? Well, there is a sense, right, of being localized. There's a sense of being here, of sitting here, right? There is that sense, but again, the sense of being localized is a feeling, isn't it? It's an idea, it's a sensation, it's an interpretation of experience, right? So look at it really closely. When you try to locate the actual observer, right? When you actually try to catch yourself in the act of cognition, in the act of being conscious, you find you can't actually do it. Because in order for you to cognize anything, you have to stand aloof from it. So you cannot stand aloof from yourself. So you yourself cannot be cognized. You cannot look at yourself as an object. Now, if I was to say to all of you, picture yourself in your mind. You'd all draw a picture of yourself. It's probably like this, you know, like looking at it on video. You might be 5 feet away. The camera's about 5 feet away from me. What you look like on a video or in a picture or something like that. Then you stop for a second, you realize that image that you're holding, you yourself directly have never ever seen. So it's basically hearsay. It's how others see you. It is not how you see yourself. Now, we've all bought off on the image in the mirror and saying, that's me, and we take that image, which is a perception from outside of ourselves, which is a subject-object perception that is not us, that is not coming from you, it never originated with you. We take that in internally, And we say, oh, that's what I am. And we actually take that in and believe it and think of ourselves as this form. Now, if you just completely set that aside and only go for what you yourself have directly experienced, not a picture of you, not a recording of you, not a video, not somebody else's description, but your own experience. What do you actually experience? All the knowledge about you, set aside. Because all that knowledge is based on the subject-object relationship. None of that can apply. The entirety of human knowledge becomes irrelevant for self-knowledge because it's describing you from a distance. What do you look like from a distance of 0? If you really take that question to heart and start pondering it deeply, you have to go into some other dimensions of yourself. You can't rely on anything your mind says. You can't rely on any picture or thought, because all of those are secondary. The self-knowledge then becomes a very different kind of inquiry. We have to kind of approach it from a completely different perspective. We approach it through the medium. Really, it's even hard to describe, right? Oftentimes what I'll do is I'll first bring people's attention to simply how the body feels, which kind of separates us somewhat from the thought and all of that. And then there's just this experience of feeling. And then you could take a step back from that, because that too is being perceived, the kinesthetic sense of the body. And now, knowing that you cannot perceive yourself as an object, what then is the source of true knowledge? Nobody here doubts the fact that they exist. If I ask you, do you exist? Where do you go to look? Now put the body aside, put the thoughts and emotions, put all of that aside. How do you know you exist? Well, you just know. Right? You just know. It's kind of like, how do you know you're in love? You just know, right? I know. Of course I exist. If I didn't, there'd be nobody sitting here talking about it. But we go, yeah, that's really good, and we want to pass it. Slow down and look at that, because it is a different source of knowledge than anything else you've ever been taught about yourself. That's why I call it Vedanta, Advaita Vedanta. Vedanta means the end of knowledge. It's talking about the end of that knowledge. And then jnana or jnana, jnana yoga is transcendent knowledge. It is knowledge that is not secondary, it is not hearsay, it is not gained from the subject-object relationship, it is gained from direct experience, the direct, unchanging fact of your own existence. It's very subtle. Now, the more you go there, and just there, and even those words are inaccurate, even a little bit misleading, the more you remove attention from the thoughts, sensations, and emotions, and keep it on that sense of being, you can begin to examine that sense of being. Does it have a boundary? My sense of existing. Whenever a boundary comes up that I imagine, I see that it's imagined. I see that it is a feeling or a thought of some sort. So that there's this idea of a boundary, but the boundary is actually appearing to me. So I can put the boundary aside. And no matter what boundary I find, the only boundary I find is I'm always aware of what's on the other side of it. So all of a sudden the boundaries begin to fade away. What about in terms of time? Does it have a beginning? Was there a point when you weren't? A sudden moment when you were? If your attention stays, that a boundary of time and a boundary of space, there's really no difference. You look at that boundary and you go, I have no experience of that. None. The only thing I ever experience is this absolutely constant, changeless, still presence that is myself. And if there's no time involved, if there's no boundaries, which means no space, then there's nothing localized. Then the idea of localization, that there's I'm here and there's something else over there, is, as you say, an illusion. It is simply an appearance, an experience. There's an experience of, there's an experience that I am here and I'm experiencing things out there. But every night you have dreams, some really, really fun dreams, right? Others not so fun. And there's distance, there's space, there's cities, there's towns, there's a universe. None of it's out there. All of it is happening right here. So there's no localization in the dream. So there's an experience of distance and the like, but when you actually examine it, you find that it's simply an experience of distance, and distance doesn't actually exist. There's an experience of time, but time doesn't actually exist. Time doesn't apply to being. Time does apply to everything out here. Everything out here is changing, which is what time is. Everything has a location and the like. That's time, or that's space. And from the point of view of the things that we experience, it's fine. It's not a problem. It doesn't create any suffering until we think of ourselves as simply one of the objects out there. When there's the sense of identity now identifies with the body, and all of a sudden I find, instead of infinite consciousness, I'm this limited finite consciousness, bound, compressed within this skull, inside this huge universe. A huge universe that apparently doesn't really care very much about me and would snuff me out in a second. That's a very long-winded answer to your question, but I want you to be able to answer these things experientially. I don't want to give you a philosophical answer to it. Yes, it's an illusion. I want you to see it for yourself. Yes, it is an illusion. But the only way you see through an illusion is to find out what's actually true. Now, what's important here to note is that when you see that something is an illusion, the shift is in one of perception. As far as the senses are concerned, the illusion, it's still there. I mean, we now know that the sun moving across the sky is an illusion. But the experience of the sun moving and the earth being still relative to itself, or rather, what we experience when the sun is still and the earth is moving, we can either see it properly, in which case we're no longer under an illusion, or we can misinterpret it, thinking I'm still and the sun is moving, and that's the illusion. Now, when the illusion is put to rest, when we see through that, it doesn't mean that suddenly everything we're experiencing changes. It doesn't. We just are no longer fooled by the false perception of it. And that's what this whole awakening enlightenment thing is about. It's just simply seeing things as they actually are without this filter in front of our eyes. Well, I've gone off on that for quite a bit. I hope that actually answers your question. I guess the bottom line is that I keep encouraging people to make this inquiry. Right? Don't just say, localization is an illusion. Find out that it is an illusion by looking. Go to the source of being. Go to the place, for lack of a better word, from which everything else is being seen. And since you cannot see it, you cannot know it in the subject-object relationship. And the subject-object relationship is the foundation of all human knowledge. So realizing that you cannot know yourself objectively means nothing and no one has ever said anything about you that was true. You and you alone are able to discern who you actually are. Directly. Ooh. Let's see. Inner aesthetic. Oh, did I just miss something here? Yeah. Hi, GP. Please correct me if my understanding is off track. As we grow in understanding of I'm not the body, I'm not even my mind, we're working to decouple the body, mind, and awareness. Is that correct? When this decoupling or space opens up, how does awareness feel? At my current stage, I feel as if the observer is definitely there, but is nothing. Does awareness have a location? For example, in the head. Thanks. No, the head is perceived in awareness, right? Where else would it be? Is the head outside of awareness? People say that it is, but nobody has ever experienced that. Nobody's ever experienced anything outside of awareness. So the idea that there's a whole world out there that's happening independently of my perception of it is questionable. Certainly questionable when we add to it that genuine self-knowledge is non-objective. You can't actually, no objective knowledge applies to consciousness. It has to be true knowledge. Jnana knowledge needs to be acquired through direct experience. So, as you grow in the understanding that I am not the body, and growing in that understanding, what that really means is that when the ideas that have been, entertained in us for very, very long, of that refer the I, we use the word I, and there's a sense of it referring back to the body, we become increasingly sensitive to that. That's what it means to grow, in the sense that I'm not the body. You become increasingly aware of the plethora of thoughts and feelings that have assumed you were for so long that they're continuing to go, right? So growing in that grace is growing in the understanding, in the practical understanding, whereby as the thought comes up, it's immediately recognized, right? At first, they come up, they feel that way, and you don't. You don't recognize it. You're back into it again. And for a while, the seeker stage, you are going in and out of it, right? But the fact of the matter is, and I always like to tell people that consciousness has never been fooled. That the one who is seeking, the one who has been fooled, the one who's believed that they are the body, is itself an image in the mind. You, in fact, never believed it. You are consciousness. But consciousness is empty of all characteristics. It doesn't have a position about anything. It doesn't say, I am this or I am that. It is simply an awareness. Pure, unbridled, open, spacious, feminine awareness. I say feminine because it's just total receptivity. And it's the mother of all existence. Appearing in that is worlds upon worlds, universes upon universes. But none of those appearances, however wonderful and blissful and heavenly or hellish, none of those have ever actually affected or left a trace at all on awareness. Don't ask, well, why is awareness creating these things that I don't like? Well, Get to the root of the one who doesn't like it, and then let's ask that question. Get to the root of the I. Let me make sure I'm not veering too far away. So what you're finding is that yes, the awareness is not the body. The idea that it is the body is pretty much dominating human life right now. It's the dominating philosophy on the planet. And as far as I'm concerned, that's why we're in the mess we're in. It isn't just about, we can point to economic systems, we can point to, financial inequality, a huge income gap. We can talk between the haves and the have-not. We can talk about all of those things. But all of those are actually even symptomatic. Our politics, our economics, our culture, our religions are all based on this idea that there's me as a body or a form or a soul in a body and this universe out there. So if we can get to the heart and soul of this and see through it, I'm not this body, that consciousness exists independently of the body, or rather, the body is nothing but an image in consciousness, and in fact, all it is the experience of what I have wrongly named sensation. It is just a particular vibration of consciousness. In that case, the entire universe just comes right back into my heart. And the end result then is there's just kind of dropping away of preferences. Excuse me. Dropping away of arguments, a dropping away of judgments, and this enormous, very humane compassion emerges, growing directly out of the essential wisdom. Because how could I possibly feel anything but love towards anyone when I realize that they're actually myself? So, here I'm answering this. Awareness, how does awareness feel? Well, how are you feeling right now? That's awareness. Now, don't attribute to awareness emotional states. Emotional states come and go against the background of awareness. And as I said earlier, right, you couldn't have a thought without being aware of it. It doesn't exist independently of the awareness of it. It's a good place to look. If you really ponder that, you can find the essential unity that thoughts are made of awareness. Emotions are made of awareness. Sensations are made of awareness. Because you cannot take away any of that and make it independent from the awareness. You cannot take a thought somewhere. They're completely intertwined. So a thought cannot exist without awareness. But if any of you have experienced in meditation or in deep sleep, awareness is quite capable of being there without a thought, without an emotion, and without a sensation. So it's primary. It's the starting point for absolutely everything. So awareness as such does not have emotions. It's not, right? It's not, I don't like that, or oh, this is wonderful. It is the point of cognition. It is you experiencing, and you can experience the entire range of emotions, from bliss to grief. And as long as you are not identified with someone experiencing bliss or grief, you'll experience all of it without any suffering. Suffering will not be present. And that's the only thing we're here for. Alleviate suffering. Be happy. I mean, really. What is enlightenment? Happiness. Happiness that is unconditional. Happiness that isn't caused. Happiness that just is. Like being just is. Right? I mean, it's inconceivable that your existence just is. It didn't start anywhere, and it doesn't end anywhere. It just is. And the knowing of it just is. You just know you are, don't you? Well, there's the Sat and Chit of the Sat Chit Ananda, and the Ananda part is happiness. That same sense of being is happiness. That's it. That's all there is to it. I know I'm kind of getting off, and I hope this is helpful for you, inner aesthetics. Does awareness have a location? Well, I covered that in with the previous answer, and the answer is look for yourself. Look and see. Can you find a boundary? Can you find a locality of it? I mean, according to the material model, there's an awareness here, there's awareness over there, right? But again, I point to the fact that what other people have to say about you, other people describe you, or a picture of you. What do you actually experience? I don't experience ever a bunch of different awarenesses. I only experience awareness. I experience all sorts of things in awareness, things that reflect awareness. I see forms talking and people saying I, right? So, but it's all happening within the awareness. If awareness is localized, then it's me and you got your own over there. Or it ends up being a solipsism where there's just me, I'm the awareness, and everything's appearing and nothing else exists. And that's not true either. What I call me, this sense of identity, this sense of a person, this thing sitting here talking to you, is something simply appearing in awareness. And taking a big step back, I fall into the awareness in which even this I is appearing. And that awareness has no location, it has no dimensions, it's outside of space. Space appears in it. And space is nothing more than, the distance between two objects, right? This is space. Take this away, what is space? Space has no meaning, no definition, except in terms of the objects. Like time has no meaning. It's just the relative time between two events, the relative distance between two events. Space between two objects. That's why the space-time continuum thing. So, again, examine awareness for yourself. But remember, you can't examine awareness as if it was a thing, right? Because if it's a thing you're looking at, well, then I ask, who are you, right? Only awareness can be aware of awareness, right? So, voomp, this is where it becomes non-dual. It comes back to one. Awareness is the only thing that can be aware of awareness, right? Right? So it's aware of itself. Self-awareness, self-realization, that awareness is the self. It's not someone who has awareness, right? Because, really, think deeply about that. Someone who has awareness. That means there's this thing here, and then there's awareness here. Well, what's aware of what? That entire thing collapses when you know that this couldn't exist without awareness being aware of it. So it can't be derived. And so when you say, what is awareness feeling? I go, what are you feeling right now? Because you're awareness. Oh, right now I'm feeling excited. I'm feeling, jazzed. I get to do this. Whatever you're feeling, listening to me, you just don't hold on to any feeling. If you hold on to the feeling, that's the sense of self that wants to grasp. The feeling's going to come. 10 minutes from now, you're going to feel something different. 2 days from now, you're going to feel something different. Those things are constantly going. Bring the attention back to that which isn't coming and going. The place from which all fluctuations and change and modulations are being perceived. And every single thing, thought, feeling, or sensation you'll notice it's not there, now it's there, then it's gone, it endures for a bit, and then it's gone. What is it that is not coming and going? Well, it's you, clearly, isn't it? And isn't it coming and going to awareness? Of course. So we only believe that awareness is compressed within a body, but that's an illusion. It's not true. The body appears in awareness. Just look for yourself. Where else is it? Is it outside of awareness? Do you have any experience of a body outside of your awareness of it? And you can dig even deeper, and you can find the body is just an idea that something does exist outside of my awareness of it. So what am I really experiencing? I'm experiencing what I call sensations, which are just like thoughts, just like feelings, but a slightly different quality to them, a slightly different character. But if there's no if there's no body, there's just sensation as a vibration of consciousness, you might say, then there's no such thing as sensation. It doesn't actually exist. The only thing there is perception. I could go further with that. That's the 5 skandhas of Buddhism. But hopefully that answers it for him. Yevgeny Ivanov. Hi G, how does consciousness observe things into reality? Talking about quantum physics findings as they relate to spirituality, is imagination a way consciousness manifests in your experience? Thanks. Yeah, the whole quantum physics thing, the you guys were probably familiar with the movie What the Bleep Do We Know? Which was originally named What the Fuck Do We Know, but they couldn't make a title of that and release the movie, so they turned it into Bleep. They interviewed a couple of actual quantum physicists. And then they interpreted what the quantum physicists said to, you say, well, we can manifest whatever we want and all of that. I saw interviews with those guys later on afterwards, and all of them said they were misinterpreted. That isn't what quantum physics says. I don't know. At that level down there, it is a very different world, right? And yet, it is our world sits on top of multiple layers of this. So when we realize that, we should realize that we don't know shit, right? We really don't know how this thing is working. I would say consciousness, anything believed, is going to shape your perception so it's going to appear to be true. That's a neurological fact. There's just too much information coming into the body, and the cognitive part of us can't handle it all. So it has to filter stuff out. Our beliefs and patterns and the like are what filters it out, and so the information that we actually get access to corresponds to our beliefs. That's what it's meant by creating reality, creating experience. When I use the word reality, I use it very specifically. Reality is awareness. Reality is truth. Unchanging, unalterable, doesn't require my belief in it to be true. It is self-luminous and self-sustaining. So reality I designate in its own category. So we're not creating reality. Reality cannot be created or destroyed. It just is. It's real. Right? What we are creating are experiences. You can use the example of light, right? Light reflecting off an object, right? The quality of the object. We say that these pants are blue, right? That this is I don't know, kind of orangish, my salt light. That the orchids are white, right? But they're not, right? These pants are not blue, right? The color is not an attribute of any object. It's an attribute of light, and the object simply absorbs some of the light and reflects some of the light. So you could actually even say the part of the light that the object has rejected is the part that we associated with it, right? I mean, the red rose, the beautiful red rose, absorbs everything except the red, right? It's kind of an odd, but that's the way we do it. The illusion is that somehow the object inherently has this quality of color. If that was the case, if you turned off the lights, it would still be the same color, but it isn't. So it is how the light interacts that really creates experience. So think of consciousness as light. I mean, it's been used historically in just every spiritual tradition. Consciousness is light, because consciousness is the light in which we see everything, right? I mean, without that, nothing is seen. Consciousness is kind of fundamental. You have to have that, or you ain't got much else, right? Now, think of every object as not having any inherent qualities whatsoever. That the only qualities that they appear to possess are the qualities of consciousness. Some aspects of consciousness are absorbed, some are reflected, and therefore we experience objects, right? I mean, even an object of light, the only reason we experience that is because we sense the difference between the background and the foreground and all of that. Think of consciousness as this pure, invisible white light. And it's totally invisible. White light is invisible, right? You can't see it until something reflects part of it back to you. Look up at the sky at night and you can see on a full moon, and that moon just illuminating everything around you. And you can see the moon, and all around the moon it's pitch black, right? There's nothing there. Well, not true. There's as much light around the moon as there is reflecting off the moon. We just don't see it because nothing's reflecting it. So think of consciousness as simply being all possible qualities. And through some completely internal method, a set of qualities congeals. This is as opposed to this set. Now this set is still there, right? Because the whole of consciousness is always there. But it now becomes background and something comes into the foreground, temporarily, right? I mean, it's a constant, it's a, nothing, nothing is ever static. It's a constant motion, right? So, it's very subtle. So just think of consciousness simply pondering itself. And its own ponderings become an object of this aspect of consciousness, this aspect, this aspect, this aspect. Like all the different frequencies of light. Red light is a different aspect of light than blue light or yellow light or ultraviolet or infrared. Right. It's a good example of it that applies just to sight. But now think of it in terms of a multidimensional universe, and that the essential light that makes everything, makes all objects possible, is consciousness itself. Let there be light, and there was light. I hope that answers your question. I'm kind of actually surprised at some of the answers that are coming to me today. They seem to be a little bit different than they normally are. But as I may have mentioned before, I only say what I hear, right? I'm kind of like taking dictation, Dave and Elaine, would you say that emptiness is an essential element of consciousness in order for the fullness of all things to manifest? Thanks again. Yes. You may have heard me say this before, but the word, our word emptiness, where it came from, and it really is mostly a Buddhist term. I don't know if it was even in the Advaita language or Advaita vocabulary before the Buddha, but it's incredibly important in Buddhism. And the word, as it was originally used written down in Sanskrit, is shunyata. I think it's the same thing in Pali, actually. That word shunyata gets translated in English into emptiness, which is what we are looking at. In the Sanskrit word, though, actually means a pregnant emptiness. So it's not a nothingness. People think of emptiness, they think of nothing, right? A void. it's not it's not nothing. It is empty of any particular defining characteristic. Because if it had a defining characteristic, it would be limited. It would be finite. But the only way you could have a finite, any kind of particular characteristic, is if it had a boundary within this bigger space, right? Otherwise, there'd be no boundary. That'd be all there was. And so the attribute that appears is an attribute of consciousness, but does not define consciousness. A pregnant emptiness is just like the infinite potential for anything. Anything. And yet, until the potential appears, you can't find anything at all. To understand that emptiness is simply the nature of things, that everything is empty of a self, right? As I was talking about, before about the little one-celled animals that got together and made all these complex things. Look, you can't find a self. You can find organizing principles, you can find things working together, but you cannot find a self. It's a simple phenomena worth looking at, and it's only because we've just been so doggedly insisting that there is a self, that I am this body, I am someone in particular, that the idea of no self or emptiness becomes obscure, arcane, hard to understand. If you look, you find you cannot find a self. Well, then what's actually here? Consciousness, the self, is not a form. If it was, it couldn't be consciousness. There would be a boundary to it. And so consciousness itself is empty of anything that defines it in terms of something else. It is non-phenomenal. It exists completely on its own. But the nature of consciousness is the inexhaustible, infinite potential for anything. So conscious awareness has no limits. The moment you say it is this, you have put a limit on it. So you can't actually say what it is. We use the word consciousness. It's pretty good, get pretty close. Awareness, sense I am, all of that kind of stuff. But when you really come down to it, what are you, who is it that's having the experience? And you'll find that every idea you have about yourself is some kind of a form. And if I am that form, then, well, how am I seeing what's outside of that form? Obviously, I'm bigger than any particular form. Stretch it all the way out, and you find that emptiness and infinitude are one and the same. That the allness and the emptiness are one. That the infinite nature of consciousness does not bind consciousness into any form. Just the way the infinite nature of music does not get bound by any particular song, however good or bad it is. Music does not enter into the form and lose itself. You cannot conceive of music without humming a tune, without some kind of a song or piece, right? And yet you look at music, it's empty. There's nothing there. Just music separate from the song. It's totally empty. It is the potential for all song. So I think that's the way to look at it, that the emptiness is not nothingness. The emptiness is that it is the essence that allows all forms to emerge. Like the light shining, block a little bit of it and something appears, right? It's really that. So the nature of light remains the same. Something appears, but even that appearance is really just a fluctuation, a modulation of the light. What we experience as life and everything in it is simply a modulation of consciousness. You know, you're looking at the screen right now, looking at me, right? And your attention's on me and what I'm saying and all that, which is right. I mean, or you're looking, you know, watch a movie or something, right? You're staring at the screen, right? But you don't think about that. You only think about the activity that's going on the screen. When you are looking around your life and experiencing all the things in your life, just realize that simultaneously you're looking at the screen. You're looking at consciousness. So whatever you experience, you are also simultaneously experiencing consciousness. You can't separate the two. When you hear a song, you're hearing music. Right? Period. You can't separate it. No matter what the experience is, you are also experiencing consciousness. Just the way you look when you're watching a movie and you're totally into the story, you are staring at the screen. But you have forgotten the screen and absorbed in the story. Now, all the non-dual inquiry is great, enjoy the story, don't forget the screen. Because without the screen, there's no story. And the screen, take the movie off the screen and what do you have? Emptiness, blankness. And yet, every possible movie there is can be displayed on it. This is even more true than a movie screen, which is projected on it. The computer screen, which is actually lighting up 60 times a second to give the illusion of this picture. Right? You are looking at the screen. The picture is the screen. The functioning of the screen is to produce pictures. You cannot separate the two. Take away the picture and you see the emptiness. Right? But that emptiness is the potential for everything. Hit a button and boom, an entire world, realities open up, and stories and all sorts of great things, romantic comedies and tragedies, and, Shakespeare, and all of it, right? All being produced by exactly the same, completely empty, apparently empty. It's the words that get us confused. It is simply everything falling back into the potentiality. Does that answer it for you, guys? Am I doing okay today, guys? I don't know. It just feels kind of different. It feels kind of different. Inner Smile Coach says, "Hi, lovely souls." Bogdan says, "Hello, GP. Is it possible to regain the sense of wonder?" Oh, God, is it ever? That's what this is all about. The awe and mystery of it. Right? The more you dig into this stuff, the more you go, holy shit. It's just, you know, there's no real reason that you exist. There's no necessity to it. Nothing mandated it. But you do. Well, you just are. I mean, just ponder that long enough, and that sense of wonder will come back. Wait a minute. Because I'm thinking of myself as my body. Well, I'm here because my parents, you know, had a little bit of fun and didn't use a contraceptive, and here I am, right? And yeah, maybe I originated somewhere and I've gone through multiple lives, all of those theories and stuff. But when you stop for a second and just ponder existence, your existence, you can't help but go, wait a minute. There's absolutely no reason why. I just do. That's the essential mystery. The mystery of genuine existence without time. You just are. Not as anything, but you just are. And you obviously are, aren't you? Consider the wonder of that. Consider the miracle of self-conscious awareness. I exist, and I know I exist. I am fully aware of my existence. And my awareness of existence makes me aware of absolutely everything. It makes it possible for me to have every possible experience there is. Good God, this is a wonder. It's a total mystery. Ponder it deeply enough, and that sense of wonder will return to you, right? You'll find yourself, I mean, the true spiritual master is in a state of wonderment. Just like, it didn't have to be this way, folks, but it is. Wow. Enjoy. Heron. Hello, Heron. IGP, is there any way to conclusively prove that consciousness does not arise from matter? Or is it a valid possibility that we can't totally exclude? That's a great, great question. Dialectically, scientifically, no, we can't. It is beyond what can be known, because you'd have, in order for you to validate the existence of something that consciousness derived from, you would have to be able to step outside of consciousness and see it independently of consciousness. You can't do that, right? So instead, we're just assuming that it does and then coming to some kind of a conclusion about it. Now, even if you looked at it scientifically, you go, well, it's like division by zero. It is an unknowable. So we just assume it as a fact, and we go looking for the essential ingredient. So from that point of view, no, you can't. The mind will always have a doubt about it, because the mind needs things objectively. Right? My conclusion and my conviction has arisen from my subjective investigation. I can't find anything other than consciousness. Even the idea that something exists other than consciousness is in consciousness. No matter where I look, I find consciousness. No matter where I look, I find the screen. Right? Then I ask, well, why is it that I'm just assuming there's something out there when I can't prove it and I have zero evidence of it? Now really look, there's no evidence in your experience that a body forms exist outside of consciousness, because you can never be outside of consciousness. So look at it really carefully, and the argument that it does completely falls apart. First off, it's unprovable. So there's a little hint of a doubt. Okay, it's unprovable, so maybe there is. But wait a minute. Why am I so convinced there must be that when I never experience it? I only ever experience consciousness. So I find that the idea that it derives from something else to be just an idea that has no evidence. Nothing confirms it. Absolutely nothing shows that that's true. And the only way materialistically to prove it is to be able to step outside of the very thing in which all experience is taking place. So then I just look at the nature of consciousness itself, which is to look at my own nature, the nature of my experience. And I find nothing at all other than consciousness. And so I conclude with utter conviction that that's all there is. There isn't anything outside of it. Now, I'm not a Buddha, right? I find myself acting as if there is. I find thoughts and things come up. Memories, stuff from the past comes up, making it feel as if. And I just catch myself. Oh, there it is again. I'm acting as if that exists independently of me. And this is wonderful, because when you really see that it's all happening within consciousness and we only believe things are separate from us, your entire world begins to shift. Even things like all of the quote-unquote negative emotions we were trying to get rid of, wait a minute, it's just something appearing in consciousness. What is it? I become curious about it. It's really, Hiron, you're a certified facilitator in inner reconciliation. This is where it came from, right? I'm simply reconciling this thing that I've given it this characteristic. Suddenly, no, it's not negative at all. I'm with it. I allow it. I get close to it. I inquire into it. And suddenly the entire thing begins to merge and integrate back into me, because that's where it came from, right? Nothing exists independently of you, which means whatever you think it is what it is. It has no inherent meaning, right? When we think of something as objective, we think, oh, that's what it means because, it has its own meaning. It doesn't. The object itself does not exist independent of consciousness. So whatever you think it is, it is. That's also more about the prior question about consciousness creating reality. And the big illusion is that it exists independently of consciousness. It isn't. It is consciousness. That's all there is. That's all I know. That's all I ever experience. And so judging from, assessing from, analyzing it from the point of view of my direct experience rather than the hearsay, what everybody else is telling me, I can find no evidence for anything but consciousness. And so the doubt just vanishes. It comes back, yeah, well, what about? And you look carefully, what is it? Whatever this is appearing, it's appearing within consciousness. Right? So what is it made of? Is it made of some substance out there that nobody, not only has nobody ever been able to see it, or nobody's been able to find it. Nobody's ever found this elusive God particle. They thought they did, and then it tricked them. there's examine it for yourself. Question everything. Notice that there's an assumption that things exist out there. Say, okay, if I kind of push it back on it because it's so dominating, right? That those of us who feel who can see quite clearly that the only thing I ever experienced is consciousness, we're the ones that have to prove our position because everybody else believes the other way. I go, wait a minute, you prove it. Prove to me. Show me something you can do that will prove to me that I'm experiencing something that exists outside of my awareness. That there's something actually out there. Nobody can prove it. Because everything that is experienced is always happening within consciousness. So you become, inner scientists. You become your own, inner astronauts. Using subjective science, not ideology or beliefs or religion or superstition, but subjective science. Right? What do I actually know? What do I actually experience, and what's the nature of it? And from that point of view, the examination of consciousness, there's nobody has more authority to do that than you, because it's what you are. It's what you experience all the time. So it doesn't matter how many letters you have after your name. Nobody else has any special access to, certain knowledge that you don't have access to, because you have direct access to it. You live with it at every moment of every day. So I hope that answers it for you. As I said, the mind is always going to be doubting because the mind is dualistic in nature. The mind will lose its doubt when it has lost its attachment to external objects. The sense of self, the egoic sense of self, requires other things in order to know itself. It cannot know itself directly because it doesn't exist independently of other objects. Buddha referred to it as dependent arising. Can't have up without down. You simply can't have it, right? So the sense of a separate self must have others, and so there's a deep spiritual energy behind it as well. This idea that we are a separate self is really where the idea of an independently functioning universe emerged from. And we've been searching for it ever since, looking for it in matter and little particles and things like that, never once realizing that the essential illusion is a separate self. And so that separate self must have something external to it in order for it to have any existence whatsoever. And this is the resistance that you feel. It is not just the mind not being satisfied, because I'm sure the arguments I've given you have been rational enough that you go, yeah, I get it, right? But so what is it that remains? Well, what remains is something much deeper than just some intellectual or scientific inquiry. What remains is a sense of identity that is embedded into the entire nervous system that assumes you to be a separate self. If you're a separate self, then there must be others, external universe, external existence. And Buddha was really clear. One of the most primary practices is to become, is perceiving the non-existence of external existence. There isn't an external existence, which means there is no separate self. There is no me and other. There is only the experiencer, the single experiencer that is experiencing everything. But that single experiencer is infinite in its nature. And so it gives rise to universe upon universe upon universe upon universe of form. So form is not a mistake. What we call duality is not a mistake. It is simply consciousness knowing itself. Hope that answers it for you, Haroon. Beautiful question. Thank you. I hate when it does that. There you go. Sanjeev says, is liberation from births and deaths also an illusion? Since no one is born, no one can die or is reborn. Yep, that is the actual meaning of that when it says to be, free from rebirth and stuff. Yes. People like to talk about, reincarnation. Well, what actually incarnated in the first place? What is the whole incarnation thing? It's the idea that there's a me, some finite of some sort, consciousness, a bounded consciousness, and now it got inside a body. So there's this whole material universe out there, and I'm in a body, right? And then I die out of it. So I'm coming and going in this in this model of reincarnation. The earth, the universe is stable. That's real, and I'm coming and going out of that. Well, the reality is that it comes and goes in me, that I'm what's stable. Consciousness, awareness, reality is what is stable, and worlds and universes appear and disappear within it. Simple as that. Simple as that. I was just thinking of another story that I might want to tell, but I'll save it. I'll save it for later. So, when you're talking about free from births and deaths, you realize there's nobody been born and nobody dying. That you have never been born. You are never going to die. You've witnessed body after coming and going, coming and going, coming and going. That's what it really means to be free from birth and death. It doesn't mean that you're not incarnating anymore and you've gone off to some heavenly realm. That would be another incarnation. And in fact, according to many traditions, there's all sorts of different levels we can go to. We can end up on another planet or, whatever. There's a million ways in which it can unfold itself. So, but none of those, all of those represent some kind of additional incarnation. To really be free from karma and births and deaths is to see that you, consciousness, is to reverse the role. There's not a static universe into which I'm being born and out of which I'm dying, but I am the constant. Consciousness, the true self, is the constant, and worlds are appearing and disappearing in them. There's a Hindu story. Vishnu is asleep on the infinite ocean of being. Vishnu being the sustainer, right? In the Hindu trilogy, you have Brahma the creator, you have Vishnu the sustainer, and you have Shiva the destroyer. So Shiva is asleep in the infinite ocean of being, and out of his navel grows a lotus. And when that lotus opens, there is Brahma, the creator god, sitting on the lotus. And every time Brahma blinks, a universe goes out of existence and a new one comes into existence. Every time he blinks, a universe is created. Every time he blinks. And he sits on that blinking for 1,000 years. And in 1,000 years, the lotus closes up, withers back into Vishnu, and another lotus grows, it opens, and there's Brahman, blinking, blinking. Universe is being created, universe is being destroyed. This represents a beautiful representation of the real nature of reality. Shiva, Brahma, Vishnu are all consciousness. Everything is always referring back. All of these stories refer back to the essential nature of everything. And the essential nature of everything is consciousness. So hopefully that answers it for you. RB says, "Hi GP, how do you embrace negative emotions? I don't know if I'm doing it wrong, but I could be sitting with it for a while and it still won't leave." Okay, very simple. Give up on it leaving. Right? You're not. If you're really going to allow yourself to experience fully, and that's how you come to fully embody the insights you have through awakening, is you must allow everything to have its life as it is, which means you don't allow things so that they'll go away. You allow them so that your relationship with them shifts. Because remember, the suffering you experience is not because a particular emotion is here or not. The suffering is your resistance to it, right? Your attachment to good feeling, your resistance or your aversion to what we call bad feelings. So turn it into a real discovery. This isn't self-help. When I do inner reconciliation, it's not self-help. I am not trying to get you in a state where all the stuff you don't like goes away. I want you to go away, not that stuff. If you go away, the suffering goes away, and the things that you, the false version of you, were resisting, transform right before your very eyes. They become something else because they have been colored by your limited view of yourself. I don't want them to leave. I want you to leave. Right? I want you to disappear. That's fine. They can be there. So, and then notice that the only reason you want them to leave, that's the resistance. So, take a step back from that. I see. I'm resisting it. What am I resisting? I've got this whole story about this. Well, put the story aside. This emotion. Let me just feel it. No story. Matter of fact, I'm not even going to give it a name. I'm just going to feel it. Little by little, it won't matter to you whether it comes and goes. Matter of fact, you may be so curious about it, you'll be disappointed when it does go. Because everything does go, right? Everything does go. That's the nature. The only thing that doesn't go is you. All experience comes and goes. Yep, some endure longer than others, but they all come and go. So don't make a story out of it. Don't say, oh, it's bad, I want to get rid of this emotion. Well, why? Who said it was bad? Well, you did, parents did, people did, you were taught. Well, wait a minute, let's find out. Is it really bad? Yeah, it's bad. Wait a minute, I don't like, that's just a thought. I've just been so convinced the resistance of it. Okay, I don't like it, all right, well, let's just put that aside and I'm just going to be present with it anyway. There it is. I mean, it's here, right? The smart thing to do is just be here because it's here. I don't want it to be here, but it's here, right? So let's surrender to the inevitable, right? I mean, let's be brilliant and have this immediate grasp of the obvious. It's here. So now, rather than trying to come up with some subtle or sophisticated or clever technique to get rid of it, what you want to get rid of is the suffering. But the suffering is not in the emotion. The suffering is in our story about it. Let go of the story. Let go of the name. And you'll find that it all settles into just really subtle sensations in the body, very subtle energetic motions. And you'll find that, yeah, some are more pleasant than others, but if I don't have any resistance to any of them, well, then none of them create any kind of hardship or suffering or no problem whatsoever. That's the basic yoga of allowing, which is one of the fundamental things in a reconciliation. It's just really very, very simple. It's not negative. We call it negative, and that's what creates the suffering. That's what creates the difficulty. That's what creates the struggle. I want to get to it. We're doing everything we can to get rid of it. Drop trying to get rid of it and just be with it and watch what happens. It doesn't matter how long it hangs out. It doesn't. Everything going on within you, this incredibly complex system that we're working with, is there for a reason. So become more curious about why it's there, what it needs. Regard a negative emotion like a child that's distressed. You wouldn't do some technique just to get them to go away. You wouldn't say, "Here, get out of here. You're terrible. Here, read this book. You need this retreat. Start meditating." You wouldn't do that to a little child. You just comfort them, right? You just pick her up, put her, stroke her hair. A little distressed child, you comfort them, right? So think of these so-called negative emotions as distressed children that are part of you, disowned parts of yourself. It's all within consciousness. So it's all bubbling up from consciousness. So there's meaning in it. There's depth in it. There's beauty in it. There's just the entire, the entire wonder, miraculous, awe-inspiring wonder that we can experience at all, that we exist at all, and that the range of our experience is just so vast. Okay, so this one, right? Who is it that says this shouldn't be here? Does consciousness say, no, obviously not. Consciousness already let it in. You're already conscious of it. So what is it that's saying, I don't like that? Take a step back. Oh, wait a minute. That's just a thought. I don't like this. I want to get rid. Wait, who's this I? That too is just something else that's appearing in front of the field of view of consciousness. And in fact, that's the way it works. An event takes place and there's a reaction in the system, right? Maybe it can be what we would call a really good feeling, could be a really bad feeling. But it's just a feeling, right? It's just a reaction, no big deal, no suffering. But then something else happens, because this is appearing and we are conscious of it. In between consciousness and the experience, this other thing arises that takes ownership of it and says, oh, that's my feeling. I don't like it. Now, if we don't question that, we think that I is actually referring to ourselves, and we start to suffer, and now we start doing self-help and a million retreats, and we're trying to get rid of it and purge all of the negative emotions. We never question this thing that has arisen to take ownership of it. Because that too is something being perceived. It's very subtle, but something comes up and says, and takes a position about this feeling. In allowing, we just notice that there's a position there, and we drop the position. Now, if you go even deeper in it, you'll see that that position makes up the sense of identity. That is your identity, and it's not you. It's just another reactive pattern. Seeing that, the sense of I goes even deeper. Now, what we used to think was me gets put on the other side of the lens. And now you see the dynamic. You see how suffering is created. There's no suffering in any circumstance. The suffering is always in the sufferer. And the sufferer doesn't exist as an entity. It too is just a collection of thoughts and feelings, positions taken that have not been scrutinized. And when you see them from the vantage point of consciousness, you see, oh, well, this is okay too. I don't care about this either. Go ahead and be there for a while. And of course, it just it's away. And then all the negativity, that is the suffering, disappears. then the event, the thing that started the whole thing, it can be there or not. You don't care, because the cascade of 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 experience that you were really trying, the suffering you were trying to eliminate, simply doesn't happen. It's gone, because the things that gave rise to suffering, that is, the sufferer, has gone. Is that clear? Very good. Very good. Josh says, "Hi GP, finally made it to a live one. Excellent. I'm so glad. I'm so glad." Notice on the picture here, when I bend over to, I'll pick this up. It looks a little bit better. Do you guys like the scene here? Is this a nice little scene here? There's actually some purple lights. They're actually grow lights that give a little purple hue, but I really liked it. And I got my crystal bowl here, which is in the key of D. Let's see, Sean Dixon, revolutionist. That's great. Hi G, I'm stuck between the pull of liberation and surrender, and being there with my mother who is sick and elderly. The two don't go together. What to do? She is very antagonistic, veiling presence. Okay. Are you aware? Let's see. Are you aware of the pull of liberation and surrender? Are you also aware of this responsibility towards your mother? You're aware of her being antagonistic and the like. Right. What's the common thread here between all of this? Your awareness. But something has arisen, right, that says, my presence is being blocked. Well, is it? I mean, if you weren't present, you wouldn't be able to have told me about any of these things. Let the sense of I return back to that which is aware of it. And you'll notice that, yeah, I would much rather sit in satsang or sit in meditation than hang out with my annoying, antagonistic mother. Right? It's a reasonable thing to do. And if you can work it out so you can do that, do. There's nothing stopping you from that. However, if you can't, right, and oftentimes we can't, right, then another level, you have to go to a different level. You have to go to this place that gets itself free from suffering. Right? The awareness that is aware of your grouchy or antagonistic mother, right, is unaffected by that. Matter of fact, were it not for awareness, there could be no mother, antagonistic or wonderful, right? So it's just what happens to be appearing on the screen. So drop your resistance to it and let your sense of I fall back into the awareness that's aware of it. And then you'll notice that another sense of I emerges that says, it's really hard, I want to be this, and it's really hard to stay in presence when this is going on. Well, that's simply something else arising to presence. You don't have to try to be presence, right? Presence isn't a state of mind. It isn't a state of at all. It's not a state of being. It's not a state of. It's not a state you come in and or go out of. It's what is. You are present, aren't you? The thing is just this other idea of somebody who is annoyed with mom, and probably rightly so. I mean, this isn't really like saying, "Oh, we should love her," but it's none of that nonsense. She probably is quite annoying, right? But the one who rises up in between you, the awareness of it, who says, "I don't like it. I got to get rid of it." Scrutinize that closely. Really look closely at that. What is that? That's another thought, isn't it? Appearing in presence. Now that thought, because it says, I don't like this, I'm having a hard time staying in presence, I have to be with my mother, right? I see all of those, that I, is that referring to consciousness? or is it referring to the sense of a separate self? It's obvious, because it's suffering, right? So take no position. Nothing can separate you from what you actually are. Nothing can keep you from the realization of awareness. Do not let any thought enter in that says, as long as I'm in this situation, I can't be aware, or I can't realize my true nature. It's not true. You are your true nature. The very fact that you can cognize any of these positions indicates that you're still in your true nature. That capacity for you of consciousness. You are conscious of it. Always let the I return back to consciousness. And then you'll see that the one who says, I fall out of presence, is just a thought appearing to presence. How could you possibly fall out of it? If you fell out of presence, it would be blank, empty, nothing, void. Nihilism, done. So you're simply learning to put an end to the identification with this I that's nothing but a thought, that's taking a position about something, creating a conflict, right? Because it's the sense of a separate self has to have an other, and some others it's going to like and want to get stuff from, and others it's going to have conflict with. It kind of thrives on the conflict. It's that you are not that. So for you, consciousness, there's no conflict. You're simply aware there's a sense of self that's creating a conflict. Well, look at that. And then you just completely dismantle it. Well, there is no self there. It's just a thought. There's nobody there. It's just a thought. And if I don't identify with it, if I don't step up and take ownership of that thought, where's it going to go? It can't sustain itself. I have to believe it. Buddha once said, if somebody gives you a gift, but you don't receive it, where does it go? Well, it goes back to the one who gave it. If I don't receive this thought of I'm the separate self in conflict, where does it go? Can't go anywhere else, right? It is completely sustained by your attention on it and belief in it. It is not self-sustained. You are. You can live without that. It can't live without you. But this is the essential practice, this is the essential illusion, this is the fall from grace we've all experienced, is the mistaking of what is a thought of I for actually being I. And that has been believed and indulged so much and practiced so well that it's automatic within the system. And therefore it seems like it's clever and knows how to do it and knows how to mess you up. And none of that's actually true. It's just this recurring thought that you've never bothered to question. Who are you? Oh, I'm obviously, self-evidently that which is aware of thoughts. So no thought can actually be true about me. And especially if that thought, I, is referring to a separate self, which is itself just another thought. You go, oh my goodness, this is like this insane circular reasoning thing, right? It's just it's a dog chasing its tail, right? As Christ said, referring to the devil, he says he's a liar and the father of it. The lie giving existence to itself. How's that? Is that helping? All right. Chris Skills. When you hear, you must know. What did I miss something earlier, Chris? Seems like I jumped right in. When you hear, you must know the truth, or you must see what's real. Who is the you they're referring to? Is it awareness? Awareness is not a person. You must do this, you just must do that. Who's the you? Ego? isn't you a person construct? Yes. Yeah, very good and very subtle, Chris. I like your questions. I do. It is very subtle. Remember, we're engaging here on a level where I'm speaking to you, and so we are having a conversation. We have to use words. Words are dualistic by nature. So the best we can do is point at things, right? So when we say, you realize who you are, think about know the truth. You must know the truth. I am making, I am making a concession to the separate self. I'm speaking as if there's a you that needs to know the truth. But if I will right to the absolute, which there's some Advaita teachers that do that. There's no you. There's nobody to know the truth. There's nothing to know. How many of you would get it? I mean, you just be completely lost. So we have to work on different levels, understanding that we're working on different levels, right? There's no you that realizes the truth. Even the realization, the enlightenment experience, the awakening, is itself an event happening in front of awareness. It has a beginning and an end. It has an event. It has a whole character around it. So everything that is an experience, be it totally blissful or total awakening, is just an experience. But it is a realization of an underlying truth. And at this point, it gets really difficult to put it into words. But I refer to Buddha. It's not the kind of thing you can explain. You only experience it. And Buddha referred to the personal realization of Buddha knowledge. And that seems kind of out of it because he would tell you there's no person, right? There's no suffer, there's nobody there. But Buddha wasn't a neo-Advaitist. He wasn't like some of these guys who do that. He taught every possible level of consciousness there was through just his enormous compassion, right? So ultimately, you'll see the dream and the dreamer are both appearing in front of consciousness, which is not a dreamer and is not dreaming. It is simply aware. It is that constant awareness. And this drama is coming and going, coming and going. It's Brahma on the lotus blinking his eyes. The universe comes into existence, goes out of existence, comes into existence, goes out of existence. In, out. So, yes, you're absolutely right. There isn't anybody to realize it. There's nothing, no one to know it, nothing to be known, nothing to be gained. That needs to be something that gets taken in on a level deeper than just the intellect, because the intellect can grasp that, but it's got to sink into the whole of your experience. It's got to penetrate everything, right? That's the ultimate awakening, and that's a practice. That's a post-awakening sadhana. That's something that goes on. I mean, in Buddhism, at all sorts of different levels. At a certain level, it's the level of the bodhisattva. But the realization, right? Truth is the truth whether I know it or not, right? And of course, the ultimate truth is that the I that doesn't know it doesn't exist, right? But if I just say that and I leave it at that, what good does it do you, right? Most of the people I talk to would just go right by them. And in doing it like that prematurely to somebody who's not ready to hear it, would in fact create suffering. Right? And remember, we're here to alleviate suffering, not to get enlightenment. Right? We are here to eliminate suffering. Enlightenment is how that happens. But that's the motivation behind it. Remember, that's what motivated Buddha. He was not seeking enlightenment. He was seeking the answer to suffering. And as a matter of fact, that famous time when he sat down under the Bodhi tree, it was after he had put himself through 6 years of asceticism. He was an ascetic, right? So if you'd seen, the beautiful statues of the Buddha, well, what he looked like was this totally emaciated stick, didn't bathe, ate very little, didn't cut his hair, didn't wear clothes, an ascetic. You see them still in in India, right? The idea that if I just completely torture and deny everything to my body, that will bring me to awakening. Well, he wasn't interested in that. He was interested in the end of suffering. And it eventually dawned on him that this was not doing any good except creating more suffering. And that is when he sat down under what became known as the Bodhi tree. And he said, I am not moving from this spot until I have the answer to suffering. It was not until I see God or awakening, the answer to suffering. And he sat there, and within a relatively short period of time after that, he did see it. And, Siddhartha stood up and became known as the Buddha, the awakened one. He saw through the entire complex of it. After that, it is awakening. It is said, legend has it, the way the story, the beautiful story goes, is that divas from heavenly heavens and hell beings and every entity there is, every being there is, gathered around to witness this, and he was entreated to teach what he had seen. And his response was, this is too subtle, nobody's going to understand it, I can't possibly teach that. And so all of the beings said, please, there are a few who the veil is thin enough, you'll be able to get to them. And Buddha said, okay, I will teach. And there was a great rejoicing in heaven and everything, because the wheel of the Dharma had once again started to turn. But I think it's very telling that Buddha how do you do this, right? You can do it like some people. You see them on YouTube. It's like there's nobody there. There's nothing to do. There is no belief. There's no believer. And it just leaves you cold. There's no heart to it. Buddha could see that. It's also not devotion and years in meditation. He could see that as well. How to teach this. He just walked out and did it. And what did he do? His very first sermon that he taught was not about enlightenment, awakening, and it was the Four Noble Truths of suffering. There is suffering, there's a cause to suffering, there's an end to suffering, and there's a means to that end. He didn't lay everything that he had saw, the illusion of cause and effect. I mean, all of the illusions of humanity evaporated for him. He was the awakened one. He was consciousness itself. And what's the first thing he teaches? Suffering. The end of suffering. So, when I hear your question, Chris, I totally get it. And I hope I've addressed it at the level that you mean it, but you can understand why I would bounce around the way I would do, and that I wouldn't just put it like that. And even when I do hear it, and when I do hear people say that, I push back a little, I question them, I prod a little bit to make sure that it's not just a concept. It's an intellectual idea that somebody has gained, because you can, and it's true. But now take that, whatever depth of understanding you have with that, and really bring it into your heart. Bring it into the fullness of your being. That's really the only way I can put it. And then alleviate suffering. Remember that the point of it is to alleviate suffering. If you use that as your yardstick, everything you bring into yourself, every practice you do for yourself, how you help others, will never go off track. You'll never get far away from the truth. Because the real nature of truth is love. It is the answer to our prayers. It is the answer to our difficulties. It is where all of the confusion and chaos and ignorance and brutality and stupidity going on in the world arises from. So I guess I'll leave it at that. What time we got here? 2:49. Oh wow, time is rushing by, and I still have quite a few questions. John M. says, the feminine I know are not too open or receptive. Well, when I'm talking about the feminine principle, goddess energy and that sort of thing, the human women, just like human men, we're identified with this finite, this small sense of self, and therefore the full effulgence of what is possible for beings, even the full effulgence that's possible for a particular form to give expression with, is severely limited. But it is not limited by nature. It is limited by the artificial sense of being a separate self. Then the magnificence of the feminine energy gets reduced to a female body with emotionalness and periods of the month and all of that kind of stuff. It's really reduced down to that, when in fact it is the goddess made manifest, as the male is the God made manifest. And you take that element out of it and you get brutality and stupidity, and you get 500 people around, white men, talking about women's rights. I mean, you get that kind of level of utter ignorance and stupidity. But it's all because of this over-identification with the form and this very narrow materialistic view we have of it. Right? There's nothing wrong with the form. It's all our ideas about it, what it means, what its purpose is, how it works, all of that kind of stuff. That's the only thing that restricts it. You'll find that as you awaken more and more to yourself as consciousness, that not only you will experience in your body a sense of openness and spaciousness. You'll have a sense that even the human expression of it will become greater. You'll have access to more inner resource, and you'll find that there's no limits to them. That there's no limit to what this form can give expression to. And you'll watch it as it transforms over time, and love every single aspect of it. I'm very different in the way I express myself now than I was 20 years ago. Duh. Yeah, but this form is no less capable of giving expression to the fullness of who we all are than the form I had 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 1,000 years ago. Right? There's no limits on anything unless we create them in our minds. Simple as that. Okay, let's see. James says, I have found that my ego is not my amigo. I like it. That's very good. No, it's not. Your mind is not your friend yet. It will be. It will be. Once in Buddhism, they don't teach the transcend. You go beyond mind. They teach transformation. The Mahayana is the transformation of the psychological mind, the egoic mind, into the great perfect mirror mind. It's a transformation that takes place because it's no longer colored by the sense of a separate self. The sense of a separate self is the ego. Take that away, and what we're calling the ego is just a bunch of thoughts and ideas that are, happen to be in a particular form, and there's no problem with them whatsoever. It becomes an ego and a problem when I, consciousness, identify with it, and I think that's me. Now suddenly I'm bound, I'm stuck, I'm in this little prison. That's when it's not your friend. But now we've turned the ego into like this entity that's fighting us. It's just a bunch of thoughts. That's all it is. So there's nothing there fighting you. There's no entity ego that is a friend or an enemy. It is all our illusions about what is in fact just the nature of experience itself. Once you see that, the nature of experience is liberated, and now what was the egoic mind becomes the great perfect mirror mind, and you see that the universe and mind are one and the same. You could even see that mind is nothing but the dynamic aspect of consciousness. It is the creative power, it is the creative aspect, the creative energy of consciousness. I skipped one here. John M. said, How do we deal with intense energies with this understanding? And do we have any choice about dealing with them? Sure, you can resist or you can allow. You know, you can live in a state of aversion, you can live in a state of equanimity. We think that somehow my training to react with resistance to certain things is inherent, that it's supposed to be that way. It isn't, it's just training, it's arbitrary. You were taught that when this happens, you're going to act like that. That's it. They were wrong. I mean, it's just, it's totally arbitrary. So whenever you're having an intense emotion, it's going to pass, right? It always does, right? So knowing that it's going to pass, why don't you just be with it for a minute? Instead of getting the resistance, oh, I can't wait it to go, I can't wait for it to go, to just kind of, okay, it's here. Oh, it's here. So am I. Oh, it's too intense. Well, who said it's too intense? I mean, it's just a thought, right? Put that thought aside and just be with it. Is it that intense? Or is there just a belief that it's intense? Yeah, there can be a lot of energy there. You know, especially, things getting healed and things like that. There can be an enormous release of energy. There could be a lot of stuff there, right? But this is too much for me. That's another thought that people have. I go, wait, stop. Let's find out. Let's be a little courageous here. Let's find out. What that really is nothing but our resistance trying to distract us, trying to suppress, right? If you're really going to be emotionally free, you have to drop the suppression so you feel the full intensity of every emotion, but simultaneously you drop all the reactions and you are just with it. You're not going off on the reactive patterns. You're not following the way the conditioning has worked before. You are right smack dab in the middle. You are sitting right at the fulcrum of the entire thing. You are not suppressing and you are not reacting, which means you're feeling the full weight of it. Do that and see if it's too intense. See if your mind isn't saying it's intense. Is it intense? If that thought never occurred to you, this is too intense. This is too hard. I can't deal with that. If that thought never occurred to you, would it be too intense? Remember, there's no such thing as an intense feeling. There's no such thing. That's all interpretive. That's all coming from the sense of self that does not want to feel it, which is absolutely absurd because you're already feeling it. All you can do is trick yourself into thinking you're not feeling it, which is what suppression is. So drop it, feel it, see what happens. You can even get so bold, okay, kill me then. All right, go ahead. If this is going to kill me, kill me. Be the master of your own inner territory. Be the authority inside. Be the one who deserves to live there. Somebody else is coming in and trying to take over your control, telling you what you should do and what you shouldn't do. Wait a minute. This is my house. This is my house. You're a guest. Right? Do your best. I'm picking up the pace a little bit here because we are getting on towards the end, yeah. We don't know poo. What the bleep, LOL. Love the vid, but also watched both sides. Yeah, good. Oh, Elsa says, hi. Is manifesting simply being about being able to focus on the desired end result in a non-resistant way? Yes, pretty much. Pretty much. Remember, desires come and go as well. So don't put too much stock into them. Don't take such personal ownership of desires, and at the same time, don't push them away. I treat desires the same way, which are, powerful motivators, the same way I do, what we call a negative emotion that you want to get rid of. Desires, you want to hold on to them. But when a desire arises, it usually runs into our various kinds of conditionings of what we're allowed to do, what we're, okay, this is not good enough for me, or this is bad, I shouldn't even want that. It runs into all sorts of stuff. So what I find the best way to do is to just be with the desire, cherish the desire, give the desire opportunity to speak and voice itself, simultaneously be willing to be present with all of the resistance, all of the negations, all of the objections, all of the conditioned responses that say you shouldn't have it, it's not good, or you don't know how to do it, or anything that implies limit and lack. And just see through all the limitation and lack, because it isn't real. Right? But then don't grab on to the desire. That's what the mistake people do. Even if they get beyond the aversion, the resistance and all of that, and feel free to have the desire, they're now attached to it. Somehow there's this very subtle idea that desire means suffering, and that I'm only going to feel good when the desire is fulfilled. And so this puts a pressure on the desire to deliver something that it can't actually deliver. The fulfillment you're seeking isn't in the desire. That's a momentary thing. The real contentment you're seeking is the background upon which desire appears. So a desire arises. Of course they do. They arise all the time. Life wouldn't exist without desire. It's completely natural. It's also impersonal. Right? It's not even your desire. Is it your desire that you blink? Is it your desire that you digest food? You think, is it my desire? You say, oh, because I'm hungry. Well, your body's hungry, right? But the body's naturally hungry. It comes from the body. Is it a personal possession? Oh, I have hunger. You don't. My hunger is better than yours. I mean, none of that actually applies when you start looking at all of these things. But we have these ideas that somehow this is personal. Desires aren't personal. The desire to eat, the desire to reproduce, the desire to have sex. It's not personal. It's not a personal possession. It's just what's here, right? And so if you see it that way, you can take your hands off of it. You can start to let go. You can say, well, if this is just a desire that belongs to life, then I don't really have to make it happen. And it could grow, it could go to fulfillment, or it could just kind of fizzle out. A lot of the desires come up, and they fizzle out. There's a lot of desires I actually got and wish I hadn't. Right? Oh, I got it, ooh, and want to try to get rid of it. So you can't trust your opinion or your judgment or your interpretation of it. So you just let it arise, and you just let go of your attachment to any of the results. Armed with the knowledge that true happiness is your nature. It is not something acquired. It is not conditional. It is not the result of certain circumstances coming together so that I get what I want and therefore I am then happy. I don't want anything. And yet desires and wants arise within this field of consciousness, and they will fulfill themselves or not. If they do, there's a feeling that goes along with that, right? And it's a wonderful feeling. It's a blissful feeling. It's an absolutely great feeling, but it'll go away. Of course it will. The true happiness, the true contentment we're seeking is just this background energy that's always there. It's simply what you are. It's inherent in life itself. It is the stillness upon which the desires are arising and subsiding. The fulfillments are arising and subsiding. The experiences are arising and subsiding. Moments of bliss, moments of agony are both arising and subsiding against this same peaceful background. And that peaceful background is happiness. That's the real, eternal, permanent, unchanging happiness. It's simply the stillness, the nature of presence itself. Does that answer your question? Oh. Dear GP. Oh, Sophie. Hi, Sophie. Looks so weird when I'm bending over there. This looks a little bit better. Dear G, it's a blessing to be in Satsang as it's my birthday. Happy birthday! Happy birthday! Celebrating another lap around the sun. Feeling gratitude for life, appreciating form. Beautiful. And for the unchanging love. Oh, well, thank you. Thank you for experience to belong once again to thee. The key, the capital D. Yes, the the big I, the single I, the real I, the ultimate I. Sanchez XX. What are your thoughts about the infinite intelligence that is a quality from awareness? This topic, I'm very passionate about it. Well, yeah, awareness is infinite intelligence, one and the same. That's another way of looking at it. You see, is the awareness could be seen as the infinite mind, right? Intelligence is the nature of awareness, just like love is the nature of awareness. It's the perfume, you know. You can't look at nature and say that's intelligent, right? You can't define it like it's an attribute. It is the undivided, undifferentiated reality of awareness, and its perfume is love, peace, compassion, brilliant intelligence, creativity, awe-inspiring everything. So it's simply another term for it. Right? There is no limit to your intelligence because you are awareness. The only limit is thinking yourself as a separate self. Separate self, then my intelligence is confined. It is limited, but it's completely an illusion. It's completely self-imposed. But because it's believed so strongly, it appears as if this is actually real. Our beliefs do create the realm of our experience, which is what this whole thing is, questioning beliefs. Even in personal development, the law of attraction, you question beliefs. In non-dual, the only thing we're doing is we're taking all of that down to the essential belief, the one place that all the other beliefs are, orbit around, and that is the sense of being a separate self. If you see through that illusion that there is no separate self, then all the rest of it just begins to dissolve, and all of that energy begins to reorganize itself in a much more expansive way, and we call that intelligence. But the very fact you can recognize something as intelligence as opposed to stupid means you inherently have infinite intelligence. You're recognizing it. But even stupid is, on a gradation of intelligence, right? Well, I'm kidding. I'm digressing a little bit. It is intelligence which recognizes intelligence in form. It is the formless intelligence that is you that recognizes intelligence when it appears as form. Wow, that was really smart. Look what they did. That was really smart. The formless intelligence in you recognizes itself in the form that it took. Like beauty, same thing. The infinite beauty that is you recognizes the beauty reflected in the form. Remember I said earlier, the color isn't an attribute of the object, it's an attribute of light. Beauty is not an attribute of any object, it is an attribute of consciousness. And so consciousness is recognizing itself in the form. And that's what gives it its beauty and its resonance and all the other stuff. Sorry, I'm going a little bit faster here. Let's see. Ron says, thanks, GP, that was great. Baton. Hello, Baton. Message retracted. Maybe I answered it for you. So, yeah, Sanchez, be passionate about intelligence. It's your nature. Every time you have a thought, wow, where did that come from? Aha moments, insights, that's all infinite intelligence manifesting itself. It's a beautiful thing to behold. Let's see. Thank you for the clear answer, says Sanjeev. Thank you. You're welcome. Love the scene and crystal. Oh, you like my crystal ball? Yeah, I love this thing. Yeah. It just continues to. I can make it really hum, like by rubbing that around, but I just kind of like the ding. And it's in the same key as my drum, so I'll play a little bit before the end. Let's see. One of the few free satsangs around GP. And let's see. Hi, JB. There has been a moment that brought the knowing of the emptiness. Does this knowing make any difference in the thought patterns? Absolutely. Absolutely it will. It could be very, very subtle at first, but believe me, when you talk about the inside of emptiness, remember, it's emptiness recognizing emptiness. There's not a person there that, oh, I'm seeing the emptiness. That's how we interpret it because we're still immature, spiritually immature. What's really happening is awareness has recognized itself, right? You are that awareness and that glimmer, right? That is so deep and so powerful because you've touched the truth of your being. It's in, right? It's one of those things. It's like when you say something, you can't unsay it. You can't unsee it. Right? It's doing its work. Even if the mind gets completely clouded, doesn't matter. Right? Boom. The message has been received. Thoughts that show up aren't any better, less, or calm. I might even say they are more than ever. It's like they attach. Do you have any suggestions? Yes, indeed. Let them. Don't fight them. Become curious about them. Don't be in a hurry to get rid of them. That's a big mistake. We think, oh, awakening, I'm going to get rid of all the bad thoughts. No. At first you may have more of them, right? Your job is to stick to what you've seen. Stick to the emptiness. Right? This is a transformation of your self-image. You are withdrawing yourself from that picture, which is nothing but a collection of these thoughts, right? And as you do begin to withdraw from that, whoa, all sorts of stuff can get stirred up. All sorts of things can get exacerbated, right? You just stick to your guns. This is who I am, right? And then notice if you don't have any argument with those thoughts appearing, that there's no suffering in them. And they just kind of come and go. And yeah, some of them, so you're not doing, we're on this journey to awakening, not because of some bounty it's going to bestow on us. This isn't personal development. We're not doing this so that we're free from all of these things, we get everything we want, we can manifest, the house and the cars and all of that kind of stuff. That may or may not happen, and it's fine. But it has nothing to do with why we're here. We seek the truth because it's the truth. We want to know the truth of ourselves because it's the truth. And all searching has to end with the truth, because the truth is constant. It doesn't change. It's not different tomorrow. So we have to start doing it again. We are seeking that which is absolutely true, unchanging, constant, dependable. We're seeking home, the place we can rest, where the seeking can stop. We're not doing that so that we get this life. Now this wonderful life that has all the goodies in it that I want. This is really wonderful. That's the object really of personal development, the law of attraction, and all that kind of stuff. It's not about you. It's about the stuff you get. And for a lot of I would sometimes ask Christians saying they're going to go to heaven after they die, and they're going to get the reward in heaven. I said, what if there isn't a reward in heaven? Would you still believe in God? Yeah, but there's got to be the reward. Why? Why is it about the reward? Why isn't it just about knowing God? We never really have an answer for that, because there's this idea that somehow there's going to be this. It's going to be streets paved gold, or whatever they think it is. It's almost as if, oh yeah, God's really great because because I'm going to get all this wonderful stuff. Yeah, it almost like kills God. It's about heaven. It's about the reward. It's a deal. It becomes a business deal. You seek God because it's God. You seek the truth because it's the truth. And the seeking can only end in the truth. So let's make sure I'm not too far off the track here. Yeah. So when the thoughts show up that aren't any better or any different, notice that a questioning thought emerges. was that really the emptiness? Did I really get anything? Oh, am I on the right track? Notice that those are also a bunch of thoughts. They're a bunch of thoughts about the spiritual practice. They're a bunch of thoughts that are still trying to create a separate self. Now the separate self, though, has had a sense of emptiness. Shouldn't all the thoughts change? Well, who said they were supposed to change? Do you think because Buddha had his awakening that it didn't rain anymore on him? that he didn't trip? That he didn't fart? I mean, he died, as far as I understand, of dysentery, right? A really nasty illness, right? Or food poisoning. There's a bunch of whole stories, and nobody's really sure which one is what. Did he get a cold? Yeah, of course, right? None of that has anything to do with. That's just what's coming and going. What is completely removed is any sense of suffering about it. So when I hear you say that, what you really want is, it's not the thoughts you really want to get rid of, it's the sense of suffering. And the meaning you've attached to those thoughts. So you've said, oh, because those thoughts are still here, I must not be getting it or doing it right. That's not true. They don't have to go. They'll go when it's time for them to go. Until then, you just remember who you are. Oh, they're coming and going. I see the emptiness. I am the emptiness. And you just keep deepening that. And you'll notice that it has effects. Sometimes they'll be really dramatic. Sometimes they'll be subtle. Sometimes they'll seem like there's none at all. But it doesn't matter, because you're not after the effect, are you? You've had enough of effects, right? You're after the source. You're not after more phenomena. You're after the nomina. You don't need more objects. You want the subject. That's where it rests. That's where this entire thing just comes to absolute stillness. Does that answer your question there? Ici? Yes, thank you very much. You're very welcome. Hi, GP, like the set. Is becoming our true self? Would we feel a lack of direction? No. And sometimes. There'll be sometimes. I'm going through it right now. Probably many may have noticed that I'm not sending out as many mailings as I do. I'm not as many courses. I'm going through a change, a dramatic change right now in how I do this teaching and what I'm going to teach and how and the like. And right now I'm experiencing indecision. I don't really know, right? So don't think that awareness means you're now perfectly decided about everything, right? Notice that indecision and decisiveness are both perceived by exactly the same thing. Now, the less of a separate self there is there, the more definitive action is going to be, because it's not being colored by anything. You find everything just naturally arising. But it isn't a matter of decisiveness or indecisiveness. Hard to make a decision, easy to make a decision. It has nothing to do with that, because you'll notice that decisions are nothing more than there's a thought that says I want to go this way, and another thought that says I want to go this way, and at some point another thought says I'm going to go that way. We say that it's making a choice, but look, there's no chooser there. There's just a thought. There's a choosing thought. The thought says, I'm going this way, up, and off it goes. And then a little bit later, another thought comes and says, oh, look what I chose. But just, no, nobody chose anything. It's just this constant unfolding. So even the decision and indecision is really a misnomer. There's simply just this experience of life unfolding, and in certain times it slows down, other times it speeds up, right? But the notice that all of that is being perceived by this place, this beautiful empty space that is perceiving both the decision and the indecision, the choices and the choice making. And it can see that there is no chooser. There's just this flow of life organizing itself. Emptiness, and what it really is emptiness giving rise to form. Out of this emptiness is coming these forms, and these forms are when you're literally watching the universe be formed right before your very eyes. As it, oh, this or this and this and this, and the entire path but nobody's doing it. As Buddha said, there's a road, there's a walking on the road, but there's no traveler. Nobody is doing this. This is the wonder of it. It is happening by nature. The best example I can use, if you listen to a really good musician, who can really improvise, Ben Monder or Keith Jarrett, some of these guys that are just amazing improvisation. They don't have a script. They're not following anything. They're not doing in that way. I was a musician. I was never on that level, but I had that experience where it's just, where in the world is this coming from? I have no idea. It's just spontaneously happening. Right? Yes, they're well trained. Everything is there, so it can happen, but you can't make it happen. It's just happening. This is the nature, the real nature of life. Even where we say a decision was made, I made a choice. No, there's nobody that choice. This is simply life unfolding. And what it is you are witnessing emptiness giving rise to form. Right? Because remember, you are both emptiness and form. That's how transcendent it is. Emptiness is the nature, form is the expression of that nature, and you couldn't have one without the other. Emptiness is form. Form is emptiness. That's right out of the Heart Sutra. They are not two. And so there is this transcendent place, which is called Prajnaparamita, which is the wisdom that is the mother of all Buddhas, which is transcendent, which is aware of both the emptiness and the form simultaneously, and is beyond all of it, is ineffable, cannot possibly be known or described. But it's you, because that's where you're looking from. Right? And so you are quite literally watching emptiness become form, and form dissolve back into emptiness. Every thought you have is emptiness becoming form, and when that thought passes, that is form falling back into emptiness. It's happening every gigasecond, picosecond of every day. Every single, that's all that's happening right now. I have no idea what my next, you can't say you chose your thoughts, because you'd have to have it before you could choose it. You'd have that thought, and then that, I'm going to choose that thought, right? They're happening spontaneously. All thought, emotion, sensation, all experience is a cosmic event. Nobody's doing anything. Everybody is being done. What we call a person is nothing but a cosmic event, a form, arising, subsiding, arising, subsiding, arising, subsiding. Form, emptiness, becoming form. You're witnessing it every day, but you're the witness of it, which means you're beyond even that, into the realm of the pure absolute. To quote Nisargadatta, I am that principle which witnesses the birth and death of the universe. And on that note, I think I'm going to just kind of let it go now. What time is it? Whoa, 3:23. Let's just close this for a second. Let me pick this up for a minute, and you guys can see that it's in perfect tune. Bring this down. Be in the picture, but it'll have a little better sound, so you can hear this. Hear that it's perfectly in tune with my bowl. So thank you all for being here. Like I said, this is the most important conversation going on in the human kingdom. It is highly, highly practical. It is not philosophical. Well, although I saw a definition of philosophy that I actually really liked. I heard Francis Lucille say it, and that is overcoming suffering through reasoning. That's what it's about. In that sense, this is philosophy. But it's highly practical. Our illusions, our misconceptions, our sense of being a separate self have all created the world we're struggling in right now. It is the root cause of it all. The sense of a separate self is the root cause of everything else. Everything arises out of that. I mean, you can chase beliefs back. You've had beliefs, oh, that's not true. You exchange it for another belief. But there's one belief around which all the rest orbit. And that is the belief that I exist independently of everything else. That there is an I. I am this body. Rather than the body simply being an experience that I, consciousness, am having. Consciousness, I am this body. That thought arises, is believed, and is the Pandora's box. It is the devil let loose on the earth. So, thank you once again for being here. Thank you for being so willing to engage in this. Thank you for allowing me to guide you through it. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to fulfill my life's purpose, which is to just talk about this and point to this all day, every day. So, thank you all. That's it for today. I may just sit here and play for a few moments longer because it's kind of fun if you'd like to listen. Until next time, wonderful to see you all. Namaste.